welcome back to my channel. I'm Rachel, the owner and creator here at the Eclectic Cottage in Spokane, Washington. Today is Wednesday, and for today's video, I have a few thrift flips for you guys. But before we get to today's projects, let me give you a couple quick announcements. Number one, I do have an order coming in from Redesign with Prima, so anything that's been out of stock on my website will soon be restocked, so keep your eyes peeled for that. I also ordered in some products that I did not get with my last order, and as soon as I have those in my hands, I will show them to you. And number two, Sweet Pickins Milk Paint announced that they are coming out with 6 new beautiful colors. I also have those coming, so they will be here shortly, and I will show them to you the minute that I get them. They were curated by Jamie Ray Vintage. They have a beautiful kind of old country cottage kind of appeal, and I think they will fit really nicely in with the rest of the Sweet Pickins Milk Paint colors. And honestly, I can hardly wait to use some of them. So stay tuned for that as well. Anyway, that's it for the quick announcements. And without further ado, let's get to today's projects. My first project is this cute little concrete bird that I picked up a while back at the thrift store, and somehow I deleted the footage of me fixing his little beak. I really liked the way he looked, but unfortunately, like I said, his little beak was broken, and so I had repaired it with some spackle and then went ahead and gave him a coat of some spray paint just as a base coat before I started painting him. For the color, I chose Weathered Wood, which is this beautiful, dark, kind of brownish gray that I love. And I am just putting one coat on, just kind of stippling that paint on, and then giving it a quick dry with my blow dryer in between, and then moving on to a second coat. So as you can see, I kind of had to dry one part so I could hold on to him, and then finish painting the other parts of him, and then dry again before I could paint some more. Now, one of my favorite things to do with little statues like this is to paint them a darker color, like this Weathered Wood, and then to go over them with white wax. Now, in this case, I'm not going to use clear wax as a buffer. I'm going to go directly over the Weathered Wood paint with that white wax so that it really, really shines, and it will give the paint a completely different look. It's just amazing how the white wax completely softens and changes the look of these darker colors. It also really helps to highlight any detail in your piece by settling into all of the nooks and crannies. Once I have a good coat of white wax completely applied to the bird all over, just using that soft bristle brush, I'm going to go back in with my dry shop towel and very gently wipe back any excess wax. Again, this was a very simple makeover, but I absolutely love the end result, and I hope you guys do too. My second project is one that I've had in my stash for quite some time, and I knew that this little drawer was broken, so it was time to get this thing fixed, painted, and out on the floor. So I'm starting by grabbing my wood glue and just giving this a good coat of that glue so that I can put this drawer back together again. I have to say, it's always fun to try and figure out exactly where to put my clamps to get them so that they're tight enough to squeeze without actually breaking anything. So once I had it done, I went ahead and set the drawer aside so that it could dry. Then it was on to cleaning my little jewelry box. It was pretty filthy after being in my stash for so long. So I'm using some Krud Kutter and then just wiping that off and then going over it with some clean water to just remove any of that Krud Kutter residue. Once it was all nice and clean and rinsed off, I went ahead and removed both of the handles from the fronts of the drawers. And then I also decided to go ahead and remove the lid just to make painting it a little bit easier. For this piece, I decided to go with one of the DIY Cottage colors. The thing I like about the Cottage colors is that they do have a built-in sealer, so you don't need to wax or do anything to the paint once it's dry. And it is also self-leveling, and it gives you a nice smooth surface to work with once it's done. So I'm going in here and just giving this thing 2 good even coats of that paint. This color is called Americauna. It's a beautiful kind of duck egg blue. I did paint off the interior of or tape off the interior of the box so that I had a nice straight line across the front of it. And then, like I said, just going in with 2 good coats, letting it dry completely in between each one. Now for this piece, I did decide I wanted a distressed look. And since this is one of those Cottage colors and it does have that beautiful built-in sealer, that means that you can't really wet distress this paint. So I am going in with some 220 grit sandpaper and just using that to distress it instead. So I'm just going around all of the edges and the raised areas and the details and just bringing back a little bit of that beautiful brown color from underneath the paint. Now, I do realize that distressing is not for everybody, so if it's not your cup of tea, you could just go ahead and skip this step. Once I was finished distressing my piece, I went ahead and removed my tape from the inside of it, and then I grabbed a damp shop towel and just gave it a really quick clean. I wanted to wipe off any of that sanding dust that might have been left behind. This step is also important because I knew I was going to be putting a transfer on this, and you definitely don't want to put a transfer onto a surface with any kind of dust on it. You want to make sure your surface is nice and clean. Next, I went ahead and reattached the lid just so that I could move on to applying my transfers. Now, hopefully you caught the video I did highlighting all of the beautiful new items that I got in from Redesign with Prima. This transfer was one of them. This one's called Blush Symphony. It's beautiful hybrid tea roses that are kind of a peachy pink with a little bit of cream. I thought they would be perfect with this Americana color, so I picked out one of the transfers and went ahead and cut it to size and then began applying it to the top of my jewelry box. Applying transfers is a pretty simple process, and in all honesty, the cottage colors make it a breeze. They really stick well to these cottage colors. So I laid my transfer down where I wanted it, and I started by applying the pieces that went over the edge a little bit. And then once I had those all stuck down really well, I went ahead and worked on the body of the transfer. So I'm just rubbing it down with that transfer stick while I peel back that piece of vellum, just making sure that as I go, all of my transfer is adhered to my piece. If I do inadvertently pick up a little bit of the transfer, I just lay that piece of vellum back down and reapply. Once I've got it down, I rub it down in with my hand, and then I go over it with a piece of that vellum to just burnish it in, make sure there aren't any air bubbles, and just make sure I have really good adhesion. Once I finished with the top one, I went ahead and put one of the roses on the fronts of the drawers. I had to cut it so that I could pull my drawers out separately. And then I just pulled each drawer out individually and applied that portion of the transfer, again, using the same technique. I decided I needed to add one of the cute little rose buds to my piece as well, so I went ahead and applied that to the bottom drawer. Now, it's good practice to put a top coat over your transfers to protect them. And normally you would be sealing your paint anyway, and that would just be part of the sealing process. However, with these cottage colors, the paint really didn't need any sort of a sealer. So I am not going to be sealing the entire piece. I chose to use liquid patina to just go over the portions with the transfer on them. I thought that liquid patina's sheen would be pretty close to the sheen of the cottage color. I did also go over the top portion of the jewelry box just so that it matched the front. Then I grabbed the hardware. It was time to replace that, and I went over it with a little bit of Decor wax by Redesign with Prima. This color is called Eternal. Just rubbing that on with my finger to give it a little bit of an aged gold look. Then I reattached my hardware to the front of my little jewelry box, and it is finally finished. I absolutely love how this thing came together. I think the colors are perfect. I hope you guys like it too. Now you guys will probably recall this little plant stand and table thing that I picked up just not too long ago at the Goodwill. I loved the form of this. I'm just really not crazy about that gold color. And the top definitely needed some help. There were cracks in the finish, and I really just didn't trust it to put paint over it. So I went ahead and sanded it smooth. Then I brought it back inside to give it a bit of a bath. I went ahead and sprayed it down really well with Krud Kutter first, wiped that back with a dry shop towel, and then moved on to some clean water with my mister bottle just to rinse off any of that Krud Kutter residue. Then it was on to paint, and for this piece, I decided to go in a direction that I normally wouldn't, you guys. I am not a super huge fan of pink. However, Sweet Pickins milk paint in the color Tickled Pink just happens to be on sale for the month of February. It is 35% off, and so I decided to go ahead and use it on this little side table. Now, even though the finish on this little table wasn't really glossy, I did decide to go ahead and err on the side of caution and add in the recommended amount of extra bond. I just really didn't want any chippiness with this little table. I did end up putting on 3 coats of the Tickled pink paint. The second one gave me really good coverage. I mainly went over it with that third coat just because I knew I was going to do some sanding and I didn't want to necessarily sand back into that gold paint all over. Once my paint had dried completely, I went ahead and took my little table outside so that I could use my little orbital sander to get a nice smooth finish on all the flat surfaces. It was very, very cold, so I was working pretty quickly as I could. And again, just going over the flat surfaces with that orbital sander. And then I did decide to go ahead and do a little bit of distressing, not anything major, just to bring out a little bit of that gold from underneath the pink paint. So for that, I'm going to be using some smaller pieces of sandpaper and doing it by hand. I don't really trust the orbital sander. It tends to take off pretty large chunks all at once. And I just wanted, like I said, a little bit of that gold popping through. Once I was finished with the distressing, I went ahead and took it back inside. Thank goodness, it's much warmer in here, you guys, and washed it off with a damp shop towel again, just to remove any of that sanding dust. Now, to bring this piece all together, I decided to go ahead and use one of the new foil transfer sets by Redesign with Prima. This one is called Golden Serenade. I have a feeling people are a little bit leery of these foil transfers because nobody has ordered any of them as yet. So I figured I would give them a try and let you guys see how they go down. The reason that I picked the milk paint to put this transfer on is because I know that milk paint tends to have a nice hard level surface that is pretty easy to apply transfers to. So I figured I'd give myself a leg up in that regard. So I did, as always, I laid my transfer down where I wanted it and began using that transfer stick to rub them down. Now the difference here is that you can't really see where your transfer is and if the whole thing is laid down. That's why you'll see me kind of flipping the paper back and taking a look at what I've got down and then kind of laying it back down and re-rubbing it. It's just because, unlike with the clear vellum, like I said, you really just can't see exactly what your transfer's doing underneath the paper. However, I did notice that they're just as easy to apply as the regular transfers. They honestly go down very, very well. So I just cut out little pieces of that transfer set to use in areas around the outside edges of my table, and I just took my time and applied each one. I also had heard that it helps if you don't rub too hard, so I was really trying to be light-handed with my transfer stick and just take my time. And you guys, like I said, these went down like a dream. I didn't really have any lifting. It was a pretty simple process, and this gold is just fantastic. It's so shiny and beautiful. I definitely will use these again. Now, as with the DIY paints, the milk paint also needs to be sealed. And for this, I decided I wanted to give this tickled pink color a little bit more of a patina. So I am using Sweet Pickins dark oil wax. And I am just pouring a little bit out onto my table and using a very stiff little chip brush to rub that around in a nice, even, thin layer, just making sure that I have good coverage all over my little table. Once you've got a good coat of your oil wax down, you want to just let it sit on your piece for roughly 10-15 minutes to really soak into the paint before you come back and wipe off the excess oil wax. Now, honestly, oil wax is usually my go-to for Sweet Pickins milk paint, and I have used it successfully many, many times over regular transfers. That being said, I don't think I would ever use it again over a foil transfer. I noticed that as I was putting the oil wax on, it seemed to pull at the transfers just a little bit, I guess. And so I was very careful going over them. And then I really noticed it when I was trying to wipe back the excess oil wax, that it was definitely pulling a little bit of that foil off of my table. So I was just very gentle and went over them with a very light hand. It did a little bit of damage, nothing too major. I think the table ended up being just fine. But like I said, I think in the future, I would use a different medium to seal my milk paint if I'm using the foil transfers. And as you can see here, I am just working to get all of that excess oil wax wiped back off of my piece. You basically want it to be pretty darn dry to the touch when you're done. As a final touch, I did decide to go back in with a little bit of that Eternal Decor Wax by Redesign with Prima and just go over a couple of the details on the base of this piece to give it a little bit more of a cohesive look. I think bringing the gold down onto the base really helped achieve that. In the end, I really love how this little table came together. I think tickled pink and gold are a perfect combo, and I hope you guys liked it too. From here for today, you guys. I hope you liked my projects that I put together for today's video. I'm interested to see what you guys think of those foil transfers and if there's something you think you would want to use in the future. And also, if you have any questions, I am happy to try and answer them for you. Like I said in the video, this was my first time ever using one of them, but I really have to say they went down just as easily as the regular transfers. They are beautiful once they're applied. And I learned a little bit. I learned that you probably don't want to use any sort of top coat over them that you're going to have to rub on. They do seem to be a little bit more tender, I guess, than the regular transfers. So I would suggest something more like the Sweet Pickins matte top coat or liquid patina or big top, something like that to go over them. So other than that, I think they're great. So let me know what you guys think. Anyway, if you did enjoy today's video, please remember to give it a thumbs up. I so appreciate that. And if you haven't already, I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel and then just hit the little notification bell so you don't miss anything. And then of course, don't forget to comment below and let me know what you thought of today's projects. Just a quick reminder too, as I kind of went over in the beginning, I do carry a full range of DIY products here at the cottage. They're available on my website at www.theeclecticcottagespokane.com. And I carry DIY paint and products as well as Sweet Pickins milk paint and products. Redesign with Prima, and some Recycled Treasures decoupage papers. So check those out there. Let's see, for Saturday's video, it's going to be more thrift flips, you guys. I do have some items that we picked up on our most recent junk run that I can hardly wait to show to you guys. But I have a feeling I'm going to save those for a future video. So for Saturday, I'm definitely going to be giving you guys some more thrift flips. Anyway, I hope you guys can join me back here for that. Until then, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week and beginning of the weekend. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you back here on Saturday. Bye, guys.